Hello and welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We do have a lot to cover. A lot has happened. We've got $14 billion that are going to be sent to Israel. That is a lot of money. We're going to compare that to how much we had sent to Ukraine at this point in the Ukraine-Russian war. Also, a NATO ally sounds like they will not be standing with us if there is something that goes down. They might even be joining in on the war with Israel, and in which case, that would be causing some complications if a NATO ally is not sitting with us. So we're going to go over that today. Also, a document, an Israeli intelligence document has leaked, showing that they do have a final plan for what they intend to do with the Gazans in Gaza, the Palestinians in Gaza. We're going to be going over that document. And also, a big case is going on that really has a big discussion around what our democracy is really all about. But a Colorado court is attempting to disqualify Donald Trump from being on the ballot. And this could definitely open the door for this could snowball, and this could ultimately end up with a real what it means for our democracy is something very serious. So we're going to go over that and what is the likelihood that this case actually succeeds? What would that mean if Colorado actually bans Trump from being on the ballot? We're going to be going over all of that tonight. But first, let me tell you about one of my favorite products, Field of Greens. This stuff, I swear, when I drink it, I really do feel better. I feel the energy boost. I feel healthier. I do feel like I crave less junk food. Field of Greens is this fine powder. You can see this here. And it is made from dehydrated whole fruits and vegetables. These whole fruits and vegetables are carefully selected to ensure that you get the most nutrients in your diet. So this is the way to get all of your greens, all of your fruits and veggies. You know, you're supposed to have how many servings a day? Who knows? Because we know we're not getting all of those. But with Field of Greens, you can get those servings in your diet. You just take a scoop of this, you mix it in with your ice water. That's the way I prefer it. And I really love the lemon lime, and it tastes like iced green tea with lemon. It really tastes delicious. It's kind of tea consistency. So it's not like a thick shake or anything goopy. You know, you see those green drinks, it's like goopy, gloppy green drink. That is not what this is. This is easy to drink. You can just quickly gulp it down, but I actually enjoy it. So it's not like, oh, you got to hold your nose and drink this stuff. It's actually really good. So head to fieldofgreens.com, get all your fruits and vegetables in your diet. This is going to help you with, everything you're supposed to have that is good, like low blood pressure and low cholesterol, and all the things that all the good things, the measurements you're supposed to have. When you get all your fruits and vegetables, you start getting those good measurements. So head to fieldofgreens.com, use that promo code Kim, and get 15% off your first order. Again, that is fieldofgreens.com, promo code Kim to get 15% off your first order. And that link is down below for you. Okay. Well, it's looking more and more like U.S. officials are gearing up for a major war in the Middle East. And we wish that they would use diplomacy and deterrence for the benefit of nearly, everyone. Well, except for the military-industrial complex and war hawks desperate to march us into World War III. But nope. Israel continues to reject a ceasefire. We're now sending an unprecedented amount of aid to the country, much more than we had sent to Ukraine at this point. We've sent thousands of troops. Both the U.S. and Israel have been striking targets in the region, and now Turkey, a NATO ally, is starting to use war language. But theirs is directed at Israel and the West, so let's dive into this story. The Congress is now set to vote on this. The House has proposed a plan. They're separating the aid from Ukraine, so they've successfully been able to do that. There was this plan by Democrats to package it all together, knowing that Republicans would not vote no for aid for Israel, but they also know a lot of Republicans are not fond of giving aid to Ukraine. Quite a few of them are. There's still a lot of them who love war and they love to fund war, but there's definitely a large Republican voting bloc that is not interested in continuing to fund the war in Ukraine. So Democrats' grand plan was to try to package this together. The new House Speaker has been able to successfully divorce those two aid packages, and instead is planning on putting together or presenting or voting, having them vote on $14.3 billion in aid to Israel. That is a boatload of money. So 14.3 billion in aid. To put this into perspective, at this point in the Ukraine war, the US had given, so 3 weeks in, so the Ukraine war started February 24th. This White House release was March 15th was this release. And they said that that they were going to be giving Ukraine, March 16th. So Ukraine war started March 25th or 24th, March 16th. So 3 weeks later, they say, we've announced today an additional $800 million in security assistance to Ukraine, bringing the total U.S. security assistance committed to Ukraine to $1 billion in just the past week, and a total of $2 billion since the start of the Biden administration. Now, I don't know how much they gave Ukraine prior to the war, but let's just say they gave all $2 billion up to that 3-week point in the war. That's $2 billion. We're talking about $14.3 billion to Israel. And when Ukraine got that $2 billion, they were fighting a nuclear superpower. Israel, on the other hand, is fighting Hamas. Hamas has, unlike Russia, that has fighter jets and missiles and tanks and nukes, right? Israel is fighting Hamas, and Hamas has what? Hang gliders. That's their Air Force trucks. They don't have any tanks. They have homemade rockets. They don't have missiles. They have people trapped in an area the size of Manhattan. So they're all grouped in together. It's not like large Ukraine that you have to go and battle in. To keep this into more perspective, Crimea, for example, is 100 times the size of Gaza. 100 times the size of Gaza is Crimea. The Donbass is 200 times the size of Gaza. So you're talking about a limited area and a primitive force of fighters that are just using homemade stuff and recycled weapons from old Soviet era weapons and old, I'm sure, or maybe newer American weapons left behind in Afghanistan, but nothing major. They have grenade launchers that they're not going to kill large groups of people or take buildings down. I mean, Hamas just doesn't have the types of weaponry to cause real mass destruction. I mean, we see them going, with the AK-47s or with some grenade launchers or hang gliders. I mean, but so $2 billion to Ukraine to fight a nuclear superpower with all the weaponry of the United States. And yet $14.3 billion to Israel to fight guys on hang gliders. Somebody make this make sense. So that is the big question, is why? Why are they giving them this much money? Unless they say this is just going to be the only amount of money we're going to be giving to Israel, and this is it. Which, of course, they say that. They sort of make these comments like they did with Ukraine, like, well, this is for America's future. This is going to be worth it. This investment's great. You have Mitt Romney saying, this is the best foreign policy investment we've made. It didn't cost us that much. We haven't killed any Americans. So, hey, yeah, I mean, never mind all of those, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead, but, no Americans are dead, and it didn't cost us a whole lot. So, they make these types of comments. They're kind of saying the same thing about this $14 billion to Israel. They're saying, well, this is going to be this is an investment for generations to come. But there's nothing in there saying this is a one-time thing. We're not giving you any more money. And this is the last time we're going to fund your war. No, instead, I just think this should really raise some eyebrows. $14 billion compared to $2 billion to Ukraine fighting a nuclear superpower. Just keep thinking about that. The Pentagon has also sent thousands of troops. They sent the Gerald R. Ford carrier, with about 5,000 sailors aboard. They're also bringing the Normandy, which is a guided missile cruiser, closer to Israel, along with 4 further missile destroyers. So they've got a missile cruiser, an aircraft carrier carrying about 5,000 soldiers, 4 missile destroyers showing up. They've also sent the Dwight Eisenhower carrier. I'm sure Eisenhower's rolling in his grave, the guy who talked about the military-industrial complex, and that's the one they send. It's known as the Ike. It also has about 5,000 sailors and can carry up to 9 squadrons of aircraft like fighter jets, helicopters. and those capable of carrying out intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations. So, they're claiming, oh, these ships are meant to be a deterrent. The Eisenhower it should be arriving soon, as well as with some other support ships. So there's going to be a lot of ships out there. That right there is about 10,000 troops, 10,000 sailors that are going to be right there. Plus, they're bringing in those missile destroyers to get closer to Israel. They're saying, yeah, this is a deterrent. This is just a deterrent. I don't think you bring in these battleships as a deterrent. At least that doesn't give off the vibe of, yeah, we're just deterring you. We want peace. We want peace. But hold on, let us get all of our troops there and 14 billion to Israel, and then Israel continually denying they're saying no to every single ceasefire that has been presented. Sounds a lot like the Russia-Ukraine war, where Ukraine was thinking, yeah, we want to do a ceasefire, and we want to work this out. And instead, the U.S. said, no, you don't. You're going to war, and you're sacrificing a bunch of Ukrainians. You'd think Israel would sort of learn a lesson on that, but I think Israel's actually quite the driver on this one. I don't think the United States is the driver on this one. I think in this situation, in this war, Israel's the driver. This is what Israel wants. I think in the Ukraine war, the United States was the driver. So the U.S. was telling little Ukraine, this is what you're going to do. But in this case, Israel is saying to little America, listen up, this is what we're going to do, and you're here to support us, and that's the end of it. You have pledged your allegiance. An attack on Israel is an attack on the United States, which is what many American politicians say. Now, if you remember, there were 2,000 troops that were given prepared to deploy orders, and according to the Pentagon, 900 of those troops have been deployed or in the process of being deployed to the Middle East. So again, they say, well, they're just there for peaceful reasons. They're there just to give support to Israel. So we're going to have then 2,000 ground troops, 10,000 sailors, and 14 billion to Israel. In the meantime, as they say that this is just fighting Hamas. We're just fighting Hamas. That's what Israel says. That's all we're doing. We were attacked. This was a terror attack, and they equate it to 9/11. This is starting to look a lot like 9/11 as far as what this is going to lead to, which is a larger war in the Middle East. And they claim, no, this is just Hamas. However, in the meantime, Israel has carried out numerous strikes in both Lebanon and Syria. So they're targeting Hezbollah, they're targeting Syria. The United States has also carried out attacks in Syria in response to what they say is a sharp rise in rocket and drone attacks on American forces in both Syria and Iraq. So this whole thing's not making anybody safer. I mean, Israel going and basically carpet bombing Gaza is what we're saying, refusing to do a ceasefire, attacking places in Lebanon and Syria. The United States going in. This is not making anyone safer. This is escalation. They claim, oh, we're just deterring. We're deterring. Don't tell me you're deterring a war when you're sending $14.3 billion to a country to fight this little homemade rocket group that flies in on hang gliders as their Air Force. Don't tell me you need $14.3 billion to fight them and that you're just trying for peace. You're wanting a deterrent, that you're all for deterring a big war, and then go and strike Lebanon and Syria in the process and send thousands of troops to the zone. You're not fooling anybody. You're not deterring anything. And you don't have any intention to deter. You are trying to escalate. And we know it because we're not idiots. We're not blind. We can see what you're doing. You have one thing coming out of your mouth telling us, oh, we don't want a wider war. We don't want an escalation. It's like they're trying to psych out all the other players in the region. Like, oh, no, we're for peace. We're for peace. Meanwhile, they got you in the crosshairs. And we can all see that. It's really obvious. But they're saying, no, this is deterrence. Now they are blaming all of this on Iran, and they don't have a shred of evidence. There's no evidence whatsoever that these are Iranian planned attacks or Iranian backed anything. They continue to label all of when they target areas in Lebanon, when they target areas in Syria, when the American bases have received some drone attacks in Iraq, they all say Iranian-backed. So an Iranian-backed militia, Iranian-backed Hezbollah, Iranian-backed Hamas, Iranian-backed, rather than saying we were hit by we're bombing Lebanon and fighting Lebanese militia groups. We're bombing Syria and we're fighting Syrians. We've got Iraqis who are droning us. We've got so because when you say it like that, it sounds like nobody wants you there, right? When you say it like that, it's wow, we're really pissing off everybody in the Middle East and they don't want our presence there and they're showing it. We're constantly fighting the Lebanese fighters, the Syrian fighters, the Iraqi fighters, and Iran, of course, with their rhetoric and their funding. So, and then you got Hamas and you got the Palestinians. Nobody wants us there, clearly. So, but everything's being blamed on Iran without a shred of evidence because clearly they're trying to get us into a war with Iran. They've been trying to get us into a war with Iran for a very, very long time. And this attack by Hamas is their way of trying to get us into this war. Finally, they've been salivating, foaming at the mouth, waiting for this. And now with this attack by Hamas, they're using that and they're claiming that they're just fighting Hamas. But meanwhile, everything they're doing, I mean, don't listen to the words, look at the actions. And the actions are showing that this is going to be marching us into a bigger war. I want to get to Turkey's Erdogan because the big question is who would be involved in this war? So in our previous attempts at wars in the Middle East, which have all been unsuccessful for the most part, we haven't eradicated any terrorist groups. For anybody to think, oh, we just need to go in there and eliminate Hamas. Okay, like we eliminated Al-Qaeda, like we eliminated ISIS, like we eliminated the Taliban. Like how good are we at this? We're not good. We're not good at this. We've never been able to do it. We haven't been able to do it, not once. So they're saying, oh, this is all just, to eliminate Hamas, it's a war on terror. The big question is who would be on our side, who would be on theirs? Turkey is a NATO ally. This is where things get tricky because Israel is not a NATO ally. Turkey is. Erdogan has some pretty harsh words and is now using some pretty war rhetoric to really tell the United States and Israel and the West that you're in the wrong part of the world and this is going to break out into a war, a crescent crusader clash is what Erdogan said. Do you want to start a crescent crusader clash? Again, Turkey is not dead. It is standing tall. You should know that we exist in the Middle East and we're in Libya and Karabakh. This is Erdogan. He is speaking on the 26th. He spoke some pretty harsh words at what looks like the Turkish parliament or to the Turkish government. Then this weekend, there was an enormous, all around the world, actually, there were enormous demonstrations on behalf of the Gazans who are being massacred by the Israelis. And I don't use that word lightly, massacred. I mean, 8,000 dead, half of which are children. Most of them, of the children under the age of 9 years old. They are slaughtering children. There's no other way around that. You've got now thousands upon tens of thousands of people grieving the death of a child, of children. Do you think that creates the sentiment when your child is killed? Do you think you would have, just be honest with yourself for a minute, do you think that your reaction would be, oh, well, I guess this taught me a lesson and I should change my ways? Or do you think it breeds the feeling of, I'm going to get revenge on you? I want to, the people who did this to me, how dare they do this to my child? How dare they? Do you think that would breed anger and resentment? Or do you think you would say, gosh, I need to change? I mean, let's get real. Most of these parents and most of these grandparents and these aunt and uncles and the teachers, those who loved these children who were killed most of them are probably not coming around thinking, well, it's our fault. It's Hamas's fault. So I guess we just should behave and live our lives the way the Israelis want it, which is not much of a life at all. So Turkey, around the world, people are rising up. There were massive demonstrations everywhere in the world. Turkey, this is the one in Turkey. Look at this crowd. The Turks are ready for war. They actually, there was many outlets who actually interviewed several of these demonstrators, and they were saying, I mean, the women, they were interviewing women, and women were saying, next time we're not going to be here waving flags. We're ready to go to battle. We are ready to go to battle for this. We have to protect our brethren, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and we cannot just be standing here waving a flag. One of them said, you think that the people in Gaza are like, wow, great, thanks for the flag waving. They're like, no, we have to do something. So the sentiment is rising in Turkey. They have the internet too. They're seeing all the videos as well. And the sentiment to them is rising. There's Erdogan wearing the Palestinian flag, and they're getting angry. They're getting very angry. They feel that the West is targeting Muslims. They feel like the West wants to come into their part of the world and eradicate people like them, and it's unacceptable to them. So Erdogan is being put into he definitely is using the war rhetoric, but this is going to put Turkey in an interesting position because they are a NATO ally. So they're going to have to at some point pick and choose who they're going to be siding with. Some of the things Erdogan said initially at the meeting that he had in front of his government, at that speech, he said things like, the whole West sees Hamas as a terrorist organization. Oh, Israel, you may be an organization because the West owes you a lot, but Turkey owes you nothing. He says Hamas is not a terrorist organization. It's a liberation and a group of mujahideen fighting to protect their land and citizens. We say to those who kill children with warplanes spewing death from the clouds, you used to run like them once. Don't hurt children. He said, oh, West, I'm calling out to you. Do you want to start a Crescent Crusader clash? Then then a couple of days later at the protest, at the mass demonstration in Turkey, he said, I reiterate that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. Israel was very offended by this. Israel is an occupier. Erdogan speaks clearly because Turkey does not owe you anything, he said. And everybody cheers. Everybody cheers. He says the main culprit behind the massacre unfolding in Gaza is the West. He also said things like, we're ready, you see us, we're ready, we could be in Gaza in minutes, using pretty harsh war rhetoric. Now, what's interesting about this is that Turkey at first presented themselves as somebody that wanted to go in and try to have a negotiation, wanted to broker a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. And Turkey's Erdogan has a good relationship, particularly with Hamas. Definitely Turkey sides and has always stood more with Palestine than with Israel. But their relationship with Israel had kind of defrosted over, it defrosted and then it iced over and then it's kind of defrosted again. And now it's definitely icing back over. But they try to have a relationship with Israel to some degree. So Turkey's in a unique position where they could potentially really go in and do a peace agreement. Now, some people say, well, how could they possibly do a peace agreement when they clearly side with Palestine? Well, how could the United States broker a peace agreement when the United States obviously sides with Israel? So Turkey is saying you need a Muslim country to come in and actually negotiate this deal rather than these countries that are all about on Israel's side and acting more like attorneys for Israel rather than actual fair brokers of these deals. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And maybe Erdogan decided to use this type of rhetoric and ramp things up because he sees that Israel has no intentions of a ceasefire, that is not the plan. The plan is not peace. The plan is not to go back to the status quo. Netanyahu is all in. He knows that when the war is over, he's finished. So he's going to keep this going for as long as possible. He's going to get to his final ultimate plan of what he wanted to do the minute he became before he became prime minister, plans that he has made abundantly clear throughout his time, and that is to get rid of the Palestinians and make sure that Israel is one nation from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and that is in their charter, in the Likud charter. But also, I just wanted, before we wrap this up, and we're going to move on to other things here, but the U.S. in total has given Israel over time, since it was founded, $158 billion. So this is not adjusting for inflation. So that doesn't sound like a lot when you compare it to what we just recently gave to Ukraine. We've given them a couple $100 billion, and Israel in total has received $158 billion. But you have to remember, adjusting for inflation, that is a bigger number because that number started in 1947. 1948 was the first, and that's government funding. Then you talk about fundraising from Americans and charitable organizations. In 1948 alone, they raised $150 million. So there's a lot of money being poured into Israel from Americans. And now we're going to be giving them another 14.3 billion. And they're supposedly fighting Hamas. That's what they're claiming. All right, guys. Let me tell you about Lean. This is a really great product if you're trying to get your body back. I know it's the holiday season and it's really difficult because now you've got all these sweets and you've got all these baked goods, and all of us have, it's like the holidays, you kind of tend to gain weight, but you don't have to. And Lean can help you. Lean can help you curb those cravings, reduce your appetite, burn the fat off of your body. This product is great. It works in the trifecta of what you need, what is proven for weight loss. The three things that they have found in like weight loss drugs and weight loss, and this is a supplement, is that you need to focus on the three things if you really want to have success in weight loss. And that is lowering blood sugar. The insulin resistance is a real problem. Metabolizing the fat that's already on the body, so using that for energy, and appetite suppression. You just have to eat less. They found, you go and you see all these diet pills and all these things that you could do. And that stuff can be very scary for a lot of people. What is great about Lean is that this is an all natural supplement. And this is going to help you with those three things, that trifecta of things to really target and help you lose that weight. And it's a high quality product. It doesn't give you, at least not for me, I don't get the jitters, but it does raise your metabolism, decreases your appetite, burns the fat off of your body, and it also helps lower your insulin it helps with that insulin resistance, lowers those blood sugars. So you can get 15% off your first order of this great product by going to takelean.com. Use promo code Kim15 for 15% off your first order. That is takelean.com. Promo code Kim15 for 15% off your first order. And that link is down below. A secret document put together by the intelligence ministry inside the Israeli government concludes that the best and final solution to the Palestinian problem in Gaza is to remove every last one of them from the area and move them into Egypt. Let's go ahead and take a look at this document. The document is in Hebrew. Here's an image of the document. So this is from the ministry, the intelligence ministry inside Israel. So this is a government agency. They're there to give assessment and analysis, and then they give this over to the government, and the government decides from there. So this isn't binding. This isn't like, yes, this is exactly what we're doing, but this is their intelligence ministry's recommendation. And in this document, they decided, they evaluated three possibilities for what to do about Gaza now with this conflict. And this is a fresh new document. This is not something from a long time ago. This has been written since the October 7th Hamas attack. And they're trying to figure out, what are we going to do with this area with Hamas? And they lay out three things. Now, 972 magazine, which is an independent Israeli outlet, they reported on this and they took the time to translate the document. So we're going to be using their translation. It's not an official translation. It's the translation of the 972 magazine, but they are an Israeli outfit. So they would be in a good position. They're based in Tel Aviv. They're in a good position to actually translate this document. So I want to read from some of it. Because it's pretty interesting. So let's go over this. It says, this was written on October 13th. The Intelligence Ministry, Policy Department, the policy paper Options for a Policy Regarding Gaza's Civilian Population. So this isn't about Hamas, this is the civilians. The executive summary says, the state of Israel is required to bring about a significant change in the civilian reality in the Gaza Strip in light of the Hamas crimes that led to the Iron Swords War. So apparently that's what they're calling this war. Therefore, it must decide on a political objective regarding the civilian population in Gaza, which should be pursued concurrently with the overthrow of the Hamas regime. So that right there, they're not just looking to get rid of Hamas. They're looking to deal with Hamas, overthrow Hamas, and try to figure out what to do with the civilian population after that, which, in a lot of ways is a responsible task. I mean, if you are going to overthrow a government, you should then think about how you're going to rebuild. I mean, America talks about this all the time. Like, we're going to overthrow this government, this dictatorship, but we never say we're going to get rid of all the people, move them somewhere else, and take the land for ourselves. We say, and then we're going to install, our own government to our liking, and we try that whole thing out. Whether or not it works, that's a different story and a different conversation, but that's the US's typical plan. So, but because you can't overthrow a government and leave people in ruin, that doesn't work out really well. Look at Libya. So the objective defined by the government requires intensive action to harness the United States and other countries to support this goal. So they're saying right there, if we're going to do whatever we're going to do, we need the United States and other countries to support this goal. Fundamental guidelines for every policy. A, overthrow of Hamas. B, evacuation of the population outside of the combat zone for the benefit of the citizens of the Gaza Strip. C, it is necessary to plan for and channel international aid to reach the area in accordance with the chosen policy. Okay, that's good. Although I think Israel should also be paying for this. D, in every policy, it is necessary to carry out a deep process of implementing an ideological change, denazification, it says. So they're wanting to denazify Gaza, which becomes really ironic as we get deeper into this paper. E, the selected policy will support the state's political goal regarding the future of the Gaza Strip and the final picture of the war. It says 4, in this document, 3 possible options will be presented as a policy of the political echelon in Israel regarding the future of the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. Each policy will be examined in the light of the following characteristics. Operative, the ability to execute operationally. So you got to be able to have a plan you can actually execute, right? It can't be pie in the sky. Legitimization, international domestic legal. So they want others to say, okay, we sanction this. It's a good idea. Go ahead. The ability to carry out an ideological and conceptual change among the population in relation to Jews and Israel. So they want them to, have this perception, this new outlook on Jews and Israel. Broad strategic implications. So those are the things that they are, that they have to examine. Number 5, they said the 3 options under examination are option A, the population remaining in Gaza and the import of Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian Authority is the government that runs the West Bank. So they're saying we keep the population in Gaza. The fact that they're even putting that as a option, like option A, the population remains in Gaza. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Was there's an option to move the people, get rid of these people? Like, okay, but there's option A, the population remaining in Gaza, and then we bring in the Palestinian Authority to run them. So instead of Hamas, we just overthrow Hamas and move in the Palestinian Authority. Option B, the population remaining in Gaza, along with the emergence of a local Arab authority. So like a new government. So rather than the Palestinian Authority running both regions, which it used to before 2007, instead, they're saying, what if, you got the Palestinian Authority running the West Bank and like how Hamas was running Gaza? Instead of Hamas, it's just a different Arab authority. Option C, the evacuation of the civilian population from Gaza to Sinai. That's it. Doesn't say anything else, like just the evacuation of the civilian population from Gaza to Egypt. All of them. Doesn't say except for the ones that are not terrorists, except for the Christians, except for none of that. It just says the evacuation of the civilian population from Gaza to Sinai. Okay, so which option are they going to go with? From an in-depth look at the options, the following insights can be derived. Option C, which is the evacuation of the entire civilian population from Gaza to Sinai, the option that will yield positive long-term strategic outcomes for Israel and is an executable option. It requires determination from the political echelon in the face of international pressure, with the emphasis on harnessing the support of the United States and additional pro-Israeli countries for the endeavor. Options A and B, which is that the Palestinians stay and that they either get the Palestinian Authority government or they get a new government. Options A and B suffer from significant deficiencies, especially in terms of their strategic implications and the lack of long-term feasibility. So they're saying it's not feasible long-term for these Palestinians to stay in Gaza. Neither of them will provide a necessary deterrent effect, which will not allow for a mindset shift. So they want a mindset shift. They're saying that they want them to view Jews in Israel different. And if we let them stay, they won't view us any different. But if we expel them, then what? I mean, do you think their mindset is going to shift? I certainly do. And I think it'll be for the worse. But they say neither of options A and B, which lets the Palestinians stick around, none of them will provide a necessary deterrent effect, will not allow for a mindset shift, and may lead within a few years to the same issues and threats that Israel has been dealing with from 2007 until today. Option A is the option with the most risks. So they're saying that option A, letting the Palestinians stay and be run by an existing Palestinian government that is running the West Bank, they're saying this is the one with the most risks. The division between the Palestinian population in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, which is what they call the West Bank, they call it Judea and Samaria. The division between the Palestinian population in Judea and in the West Bank and Gaza is one of the central obstacles preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state. So they're saying the division of these governments, when they're run by two different governments, this is the biggest obstacle, not for Israel, for Palestinians. This is the biggest obstacle for Palestinians in establishing a Palestinian state. Choosing this option entails an unprecedented victory for the Palestinian national movement, a victory that will come at the cost of thousands of Israeli civilians and soldiers and does not guarantee security for Israel. So they're saying a two-state solution is not good. We don't want it. It's not an option. It's the worst option of all of them, they're saying. The two-state solution is the worst one. Anybody who sits there and says, it's the Palestinians who don't want a peace deal. It's the Palestinians. They're the ones who reject it. No, Israel's never wanted to give this to them. They have undercut every single possible negotiation, every single possible. And for one, there's never been an actual agreement for a two-state solution and peace that Israel has agreed to. They've agreed to continuing to discuss it. That's what the Oslo Accords were. The Oslo Accords weren't, you get your state, we get ours. It was, we'll continue talking about it. It was just a framework for, and a goal line. It was like 5 years. Within 5 years, we're going to get us to that point, and we're going to continue talking about it. And what Netanyahu did when he got into office right after the Oslo Accords, because the prime minister who did the deal with Arafat, Rabin, was assassinated by Netanyahu's guys who were aligned with Netanyahu. Netanyahu was very much in line with that. And when they assassinated him for the Oslo Accords, Netanyahu got in there and said, I'm absolutely not going to have the Oslo Accords. There is a leaked tape, which maybe we'll play at some point this week, but there's a leaked tape that came out. It leaked in 2010, and it was from early 2000s, that right after the Oslo Accords, right after Netanyahu became prime minister, where he brags about how he dismantled the Oslo Accords, how he was able to just kill the deal completely and really so Netanyahu has been death to the two-state solution. He has not wanted it. The Israelis have just absolutely not wanted it. And this paper lays it out. Option A is the option with the most risk. The division between the Palestinian population, between the West Bank and Gaza, is one of our best things. And if we allow them to have the same government, this is going to be a boon for the Palestinian national movement. They'll get maybe that two-state solution, and that's not what we want. So then they go into, but they said options B suffer some significant deficiencies, because they say that B is just going to get us where we were. You know, if we give them another government, not the Palestinian Authority, but something else, it's just going to end up in the same result. Yeah, because these people who are under blockade, who are living lives that do not allow any option for prosperity, none. They have no movement upward. They just have to sit, live their lives. No building of businesses, no building, they just cannot prosper. There's no prosperity in Gaza, or really in the West Bank. There's much less in Gaza. And if they get them option B with another government, they're just going to put them in that same position. And they're saying another Hamas is going to rise up and we're going to have this problem. So they're saying option C is the best one. They say option C will yield positive long-term strategic outcomes for Israel. And it is an executable option. What do they mean it's an executable option? How do you move 2 million people? All of them. How do you get rid of 2 million people? And they're saying this is the option that will yield positive long-term strategic outcomes for Israel, and it's executable. Well, I'll tell you how it's executable. You bomb the crap out of them until they run to the border with Egypt, and then you push Egypt and you use the United States to pressure Egypt and to open up the gates. The thing about Egypt is Israel has been the country that has received more U.S. aid than any other foreign country. The second one is Egypt, and that was strategic. That deal was done, and it was a strategic move because if they could get Egypt on the on the welfare program, and Egypt can't survive without U.S. welfare, then you can force them into doing whatever you want as part of this welfare program. And one of those aspects of the welfare program could say to Egypt, we're gonna rip up the welfare. We're gonna take away the welfare if you don't do what we want you to do. And Israel told us that they want to do this, and so since we are basically doing whatever Israel wants, we're telling you that Israel wants it, so you have to do it. And we'll also give you a bunch of money. That is what the Israelis are saying. Why don't we, make sure there's a bunch of international money? They're not saying Israeli money. Israel doesn't want to pay for this. They're going to make us pay for it. They're going to make the rest of the world pay for it. When reparations for the Holocaust were paid, they were paid by Germany to Israel. They still pay reparations to Israel for the Holocaust. Yet Israel is saying, well, we'll get international money to pay for our Holocaust, which this would be. I mean, there's nothing short. I'm sorry. There's no other word but to use genocide when you're moving 2 million people out of an area. That is actually the definition of genocide. A lot of people think genocide means just killing people, but it could also just mean moving them out, debilitating their lives, trying to harm them. You're trying to harm them in a way that is going to limit their prosperity, that is going to harm them and limit them for your benefit. That is basically, and there's a few different ways that they laid out when they decided on what a Holocaust was back in 1948. Let me see if I can actually pull this up, of a genocide, the definition of a genocide. And they said that a genocide definition is like the deliberate killing of a large group of people, or, the aim of destroying that nation. So if you want to destroy that nation, or you want to destroy the people, then that would be considered a genocide. Because this is Palestine and you're trying to destroy Palestine, and you keep saying things like there never was a Palestine, there's never going to be a Palestine. And then you tell these Palestinians, these 2 million Palestinians, and you're going to leave. We're destroying your land. We're taking your land and you're getting out of here. That is actually the definition, the true definition. Words mean something. So that is actually the definition of genocide. So there they are saying, this is the plan. Point blank, this is what we plan to do. So clearly the plan has been to move these civilians. They told 1.1 million that they needed to evacuate from the north to the south. Then they said, we're bombing the north, and then we're going to, and actually I laid this out just a couple of weeks ago. I think we actually have this clip where I laid out the plan, and now we're seeing that plan actually come to fruition now that Israel is invaded into Gaza. Do we have that clip? Let's go ahead and play that. The vast majority of the Palestinian people, the way they view this war with the Israelis is that they are resisting by existing, by simply still being there on that land and saying, you do not get to take our land. That is how they're battling, just by existing, by still remaining there. So the vast majority of the Palestinians are not going to run off into other nations because they believe that part of the battle is just remaining still, standing your ground in your spot and saying, this land is mine and you're not going to steal it from me. So Israel wants nothing more than for these Arab nations to open up their borders. And let me tell you exactly what Israel would do in this instance. So what they want is they want Egypt to say, fine, we will take the refugees in. Israel would then start at the very top of the Gaza Strip, and they would start bombing. They would call the Palestinians. This time they would give them maybe the knock on the roof or the phone call saying, we're about to bomb you, get out. And they would start bombing row by row by row, starting at the top of that Gaza Strip, pushing the people, herding the people towards the Egyptian border. Meanwhile, carpet bombing and leveling the place, pushing the people closer and closer to that Egyptian border, bombing and bombing and bombing and pushing and pushing and bombing and pushing until all the people are at the border, at the Rafah crossing. And then what do? Then you start bombing the Rafah crossing. You start bombing them even more to get them to really run, get them to run into Egypt. And once they run into Egypt, because Egypt's opened up the humanitarian corridor, you're done. You've won the war. The people are gone. Okay, so that was October 12th. I just want to point out that on October 13th, the very next day, Israel gave the order for 1.1 million people in the north to move south. The very next day, they said, okay, I mean, hopefully they're not watching this and they're thinking, good ideas, Kim, let's do it. But that is exactly what they did. They said to the 1.1 million, you got to go, move south, because we've got this military operation. And then they've now started bombing the south. This is what the Times, here's a tweet from the Times of Gaza saying, breaking Israeli warplanes intensify their attacks on Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. So we've got lots of reports all throughout Gaza, independent observers that are showing where Israel is bombing. And a lot of it's going on in the southern part, but they're doing intensive in the north and they're kind of moving their way. Here's another video. This is actually one that the Israeli Defense Forces, so then they decided over the weekend to invade, right? They've got ground troops. I don't know exactly how well that's going, but they've got ground troops going into Gaza and they're trying to push everybody. They're pushing everybody. So they're actually implementing this plan. And over the weekend, the Israel Defense Forces issued this really odd video. And the reason why it's odd is because it's a warning. It's telling everybody in Gaza, we want you to get out of the north. We want you to move to the south. Move to the south. But what's weird about it is this was released when they'd cut off the internet, so there was no way to get this to the Gazans. And secondly, it was in English. And the last I checked, the Gazans aren't fluent English speakers. But watch this video.
Attention, citizens of Gaza, listen carefully. This is an urgent military advisory from the Israel Defense Forces. For your immediate safety, we urge all residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City to temporarily relocate south. Let me repeat. We urge all residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City to relocate south immediately. This is a temporary measure. Moving back to northern Gaza will be possible once the intense hostilities end. Hamas puts your life in danger by placing weapons and forces within civilians' area in Gaza, including schools, mosques, and hospitals. The impending IDF operation is set to neutralize these threats of Hamas with precision and intensity. Humanity remains haunted by the massacre unleashed by Hamas on October 7th, a massacre of innocent lives. Israeli men, women, children, and babies were beheaded, executed, raped, and burnt alive. We won't forget that. And the kidnapping of over 200 Israelis we will not forget. To the residents of northern Gaza and Gaza City, your window to act is closing. Move south. For your own safety, move south. This is not a mere precaution. It is an urgent plea for the safety of the civilians in Gaza.
Right. So move south. We promise you'll be able to come back. To what? After you've bombed the place? Then they're going to say, oh, but you can't come back because, there's nothing to come back to. It's been leveled. They claim that they're targeting Hamas. This is what he was saying. Oh, we are doing precision strikes targeting Hamas. But what's really bizarre is that I've been seeing Hamas leadership all over the news. I mean, they seem to be interviewed by a variety of news outlets. Sky News did an interview. You've got the Middle Eastern Media Studies did an interview. These are leaders of Hamas. Clearly, if you just want to target Hamas, it looks like the way to target them is to book an interview. I mean, these guys are not sitting in Gaza. These guys are in Qatar. They're perhaps in other places, maybe Turkey, maybe Lebanon. I mean, they're all over, but they're not in Gaza. So the leadership isn't there. So when they say, oh, yeah, we are taking them out with precision weapons, What are you talking about? The leaders aren't even there. So really, what are you doing? What is the excuse? Because we could see with our own eyes that the leaders are being interviewed on major network news, and you're claiming that you're targeting these Hamas leaders and that you're trying to get to them. Just book an interview, and there you go. You got the guy. They don't have any intentions of getting Hamas. That is not what they're wanting to do. They're just wanting to move the population. They're just wanting to get them out of there. And that document from the Israeli intelligence ministry lays it out, saying that option A, option B and C, or is it A and B? Which one was the one that, yeah, C is the option to get rid of them. A and B, to let them stay, but just have different government, not Hamas, are not options. They have no intention of letting the Palestinians stay. They're not looking at, oh, we're just trying to get rid of Hamas. They're trying to get rid of all of them. Absolutely all of them. And I want to point this out because there's another thing that goes on, and this is that there's this big push in the United States to label anybody and everybody an anti-Semite. So if you go and protest on behalf of the Palestinians, if you protest this document coming out, and now if people rise up and say this is a genocide, you are actually trying to eradicate 2 million people from your land, push them into Egypt. This would be like a trail of tears. You know how many people are going to die in the process of doing this? They said that they want to set up tents and have them living in tents. Could you imagine you get wiped out of your house and you have to go live in tents somewhere? This is like the Nakba. This is what happened the first time around. And so they're trying to push all these people out. People are absolutely going to catch wind of this. They're going to be protesting, and anyone who protests is an anti-Semite. This is what we're learning. One of the phrases used in the protest movement is "from river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Now, this is perceived by many to be a call to end Israel's to end Jews and Israel, and just the end of Israel is what "from river to the sea, Palestine will be free." That's what that phrase means. They say it is a dog whistle for genocide against the Jews. It's a dog whistle to wipe Israel off the face of the map. But I want to point this out. So if that's true, now I think that what it means is being free one state. Maybe it would be a Palestinian state. Maybe that is what they're calling for. Maybe they are calling for the end of the Israeli state and maybe for the implementation of the Palestinian state with them. Some people may interpret it and mean it like, yeah, I just want to get rid of all the Jews that are there. Some people may mean it that way. I'm sure there's a lot of different interpretations for that phrase. I think the average American, though, just means Palestinians should be free throughout the whole land. And then maybe they have like different ideas on whether that be a one-state solution or a two-state solution, or whatever their solution might be. I think they just really mean it as a call for freedom, just actual freedom, and not anything sinister beyond that. I think that's the average person's take on that phrase. Now, I want to point out, this was actually pointed out by Aaron Mate. He's been defending this phrase. He's been using it and defending it on social media, saying it is not what all of these people who claim it's an anti-Semitic phrase. He's like, that is not what this is. And he's Jewish, and his family were killed in the Holocaust. And he says, I've added this excerpt of the charter of Israel's governing Likud party, which Netanyahu leads. So this is his party, Netanyahu's party. It declares that, quote, between the sea and the Jordan. So the Jordan is the Jordan River. So between the sea and the river, there will only be Israeli sovereignty, and there will be no Palestinian state. So claiming that, oh, this phrase is in Hamas's charter. I've seen this discussed all over social media, that phrase in particular, "from river to the sea, Palestine will be free," that this is a phrase used by Hamas. This phrase has been used well before Hamas ever came in. This was actually implemented starting in the 60s, well before Hamas took over in 2007. And the Likud party has a very similar phrase, actually an identical phrase, saying that this is actually taken from their charter, from the Likud party charter, saying the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable and is linked with their right to security and peace. Therefore, Judea and Samaria, which is West Bank, will not be handed to any foreign administration. Between the sea and the Jordan River, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. So they're saying from the river to the sea, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. That's also a battle cry. So from river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or from river to the sea, only Israeli sovereignty. Take your pick. They're both that way. So both sides are wanting to completely control the land. Both sides are wanting to take over, and that is what both sides want. there are most people on both sides, I think, want to live peacefully somehow, whether that be a one state or a two state. I think most of the Jewish population and actually most of the Palestinian population, when I was over there talking to Palestinians, the vast majority would like to have their own state, and the vast majority of Israelis want their own state. Most of them want a two-state solution. I don't know how sustainable that is in the long run because they have to still share resources. It's still a tiny little area, and they would have to figure out, who controls the air, who controls the water, who controls the security. And and that was part of the Oslo Accords, is that Israel got all of that, and Palestine had to kind of live as an independently run nation under Israel. It was more like Palestine would operate as a state inside of a nation. So it'd be like the state of Texas inside of the United States of America. But the Israelis, rather than really truly letting that state flourish, they don't want it there. And they've made that very clear, and they want them gone. So they did everything they could to debilitate them, to cut their water to where they only get it 3 days a week, to cut and then blame it on them because they say, well, you didn't build any infrastructure. And the Palestinians are like, you didn't give us the permits to build the infrastructure, and you have to give us the permit. If they build it without the permit, the Israelis come and they demolish it. So it's this issue, this kind of rigmarole issue that they constantly have to go through. And ultimately, the Israelis are in 100% control. You really, not a lot you could blame the Palestinians for, except for a lot of the leadership getting rich, just like any politics, any government, any politician is just going to look out for themselves. They get rich and they cozy up with the bad guy, and they let the bad guy run them over because they're getting something out of it. Like what we see with Zelensky in Ukraine. Ukraine is in a bad situation, and it's because Zelensky is locked in with, he's maybe getting rich with America and cozy in with Americans. He's looking out for his own skin. And that is that much of the demise of a lot of the Ukrainian people. A lot of the Palestinian leadership are a lot in that same way. They suck, and they're making the Palestinian, they do the same sorts of deals as Zelensky, and they put the people at risk. It's up to the bigger player, the United States, to say to Zelensky, we want you to negotiate for peace. We don't want you to be sacrificing your people and ruining your country because of for what we want, our strategic gain. It takes Israel to say to Palestine, because Israel's the big power player in this situation, to say, look, you cannot be a corrupt government. We're going to end the corruption in the government. We're going to make sure that this money and that these resources go to the people. We're going to make sure that Palestine flourishes because they're right there next to us. And when they're flourishing and safe, we're flourishing and we're safe. Everybody wins. But that's not what's happening. Instead, it's destroy, destroy, destroy for your own gain. And that's been, unfortunately, for much of time, much of the way many governments have operated, right? That's unfortunately the truth of it. So the link to this paper is down below. You guys can read it for yourself. I'll make sure to put that there. It's not there right now, but I'll be sure to put that there for you. All right, guys. Well, if you're worried about where we're headed with this endless type of war, the fact is there's one asset that has withstood economic upheaval and has a history of being incredibly stable. So if you're worried about the dollar, if you're worried about where we're going economically, that asset that has withstood all of that is gold. So get yourself potentially, look into investing and diversify into gold. This is one of the assets I definitely am a big believer in. My family that fled North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Iran. My grandmother has been through it all, from fleeing the North to the South, fleeing the South after the American War to Iran, then the fall of the Shah, then came to the United States. She's had quite the life. She's still alive, 96 years old. Bless her. Gold is actually how she was able to survive from one country to the next. You can't take a currency that's collapsing, but you could take gold. Everybody understands gold. That's a language for everywhere. It's a currency for everywhere. And that is how my family was able to get out of unstable economic upheaval, war, time and time again. So I'm a big believer in gold. Visit birchgold.com/Kim and you could get your free info kit. They're going to hold your hand through the whole process. So find out which way is best for you. It might be physical gold. It could be an IRA and in precious metals. Work it out with them. Talk it over with them. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. So visit birchgold.com/Kim to get your info kit, your free info kit. Again, that is birchgold.com/Kim. All right, last story for the night. They're doing it. They're trying to thwart democracy. A major court battle began today in Colorado to ban Trump from holding office. If the plaintiffs win, Trump will not appear on the Colorado ballot at all. And this would then cause a ripple effect in other states. You could believe that many of those never Trumpers and many of those who are much in the Democratic establishment, they absolutely do not want Donald Trump on the ballot. They want this court case to win so that they can then go and implement this state after state after state. Unfortunately, there are a lot of attorneys who believe this might actually go through. He may be banned from the Colorado ballot. According to the New York Times, the lawsuit filed in September by 6 Colorado voters with the help of a watchdog group called Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington argues that former President Donald Trump is ineligible to hold office under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Now, let me read that section to you. It says, the 14th Amendment, Section 3 states, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Which there's not a 2/3 Republican majority. So, and that's what the Democrats are counting on. New York Times goes on to say the plaintiffs say that Mr. Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election, namely his actions before and while his supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try and stop the certification of Biden's victory, meet the disqualification criteria. So they think that he engaged in an insurrection. Sarah B. Wallace, the state district court judge presiding over the case, rejected multiple requests from Trump and from the Colorado Republican State Central Committee in recent weeks to dismiss the case without a trial. So they wanted to dismiss it, and she said nope. Well, Wallace was also on Monday she rejected a call for her to recuse herself because she had donated to an organization that opposes Republican candidates in Colorado. So she's got a different agenda there. So yeah, that donation. So they tried to get her to recuse herself, and she's not recusing herself. So there are some experts who are saying that in fact this could potentially this could actually go through. It says here that this is some of the argument that was heard today in court. We are here because Trump claims after all of that he has the right to be president again. But our Constitution, our shared charter of our nation, says he cannot do so. Trump's lawyer said that engaging in an insurrection requires more than mere incitement through words. He says Trump had never called for violence and had urged his supporters to act peacefully and patriotically, even. But so they're saying that let me see here, some prominent constitutional experts, including the conservative law professors William Bode and Michael Stokes Paulson, in an academic article, and the conservative former judge Michael Luttig and the liberal law professor Lawrence Tribe have argued that the clause applies to Mr. Trump. So they say, but that view is far from universal among legal scholars, and several have told the New York Times over the past few months that the questions are complicated. So it's not cut and dry, unfortunately. It isn't cut and dry. That means that if he loses this case, if the plaintiffs win and they actually are able to successfully kick him off the Colorado ballot, of course, it's going to go to appeals. Of course, it would head to the Supreme Court. I would think that they would hear it quickly on whether or not he incited an insurrection. Let's just listen to what he said on that day, and you decide, do you think he's inciting violence and an insurrection and an overthrow of the government? Watch this.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
So I didn't hear anything like what I hear come from, usually for a protest, it's like, we got to fight for our rights. And then you could maybe interpret fight like they were violent. They were trying to incite violence. He didn't say anything violent. He says, we're going to peacefully and patriotically go there, make our voices heard. We're going to see if they have integrity. We're going to see if they do the right thing. We're going to be cheering for some and some not so much. I mean, these are not words of get out there and fight and take it over, and we're not giving up, and we're not caving, we're not conceding. I'm going to be in that Oval Office. He doesn't say anything like that, but they're still saying, they're trying to say that this is incitement of an insurrection. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to prove that in court. Seems like I would hope that you would need more evidence than that. Trump is still the leading candidate by a long shot. None of this is cutting him in the polls. They know that his popularity is still great, so they can't do anything about his popularity. They've tried impeaching him a couple times, all these lawsuits, but ultimately he's still leading in the polls, and ultimately he is still the leading candidate. He's number one. Donald Trump holds this is amongst Republican voters. 43% are still looking to vote for Donald Trump. DeSantis has 16%. Nikki Haley has shot up to 16% as well. Tim Scott at 7%. Vivek Ramaswamy has fallen down to 4%. So Trump is still the big guy, and the only way that they're going to be able to get rid of him is if they actually make him ineligible. So voters are still going to go for him. They know this. The only way to get rid of him now is just to disqualify him completely, and that is what they're attempting to do. We're the defenders of democracy, say Democrats. We are the ones that are holding this country together. Really? Doesn't really look like it. Looks like you're kind of thwarting democracy and, trying to rig an election. I mean, that's what rigging an election would be, is if you disqualify the front runner. You disqualify the front runner. Do you not think that's rigging an election? That's exactly the definition of rigging it. Let's talk about Nikki Haley just for a minute there. She jumped 10 points in the polls. She jumped up 6% to 16% in the last couple of weeks. This just goes to show war talk works. She has been ramping up the rhetoric. All she talks about is, we have got to defend our friends, and we've got to stand. We will do anything, give Israel anything they want, give them anything they ask for. No exceptions, no questions, give them everything. Ukraine, we got to give them everything. War, war, war. You won't believe. I mean, she was bad enough with all the things that she said, but it actually gets worse, believe it or not. I didn't think Nikki Haley could get worse, but she gets worse. Watch this.
Our military ready for future wars, which are artificial intelligence, cyber, space, and make sure that they have the equipment they need to defend themselves when we're at land, air, or sea. We've got to be smart. We've got to be ready. I'm tired of talking about a Department of Defense. I want a Department of Offense.
I'm tired of talking about a Department of Defense. I want a Department of Offense. We got to prepare ourselves for future wars, artificial intelligence, cyber, space. We got to get out there. We got to fight. Wow. A Department of Offense. Just say, Nikki, you want the War Department back. You don't want to call it a Department of Defense. It is not about American defense. It is going to be putting us on the offense. We are going to wage war around the world. And unfortunately, the worst part about that is her statement's ridiculous. She wants to march us into endless war. She's saying she wants to be offensive about it, not just defensive. This isn't going to be about America's defense. We have to defend ourselves. No, she's saying, forget that. We got to get out there and destroy, destroy, destroy. And the saddest part about this is apparently that war talk is working. That's the worst part about it. I think most Americans, at least most of the GOP, is starting to wear on war. I think we're starting to see that war weariness set in. I don't know what percentage actually of the GOP. I'd love to know what percentage of the GOP voting base. We know how the politicians are, but it'd be nice to see if the voting base is truly flipping on that. I don't know though, because as soon as you mention Israel, as soon as you mention China, suddenly it's war. Yes, we have to defeat them. We have to defend them, and we have to defeat them. But her poll numbers climbing from 6% to 16% really do concern me. It really makes me think that Americans are still fundamentally war hungry. And maybe that is why our politicians are war hungry. Maybe our politicians are just mirroring the sentiment of the American people. I would like to think that we would decide to put more effort and money into our own country. We are falling apart as a country. Our infrastructure, homelessness, drug addiction, crime. We've got a lot of problems. Inflation, middle class is deteriorating. The poor are getting poorer, and the rich are getting richer. And we've got the war class just constantly wanting more war. And this worries me that when I see her poll numbers go up like that, it worries me that this is actually the sentiment of the American people. But maybe some minds are changing. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how her poll numbers continue to go. And the other big question is what would happen if Trump does get disqualified? If Trump ends up disqualified by this Colorado court, and if other states follow and he ends up being disqualified out of, let's say, 20 states, he would not be able to win the presidency. It'd be interesting to see what the GOP does at that point. Do they go ahead and go with Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley? Is that what those two are banking on? Are those two banking on the political establishment on the Republican side helping disqualify Trump? Because that would be absolutely something they would do. They would go in there and they'd say, we just got to disqualify this guy, make him so that he's ineligible. He's taken over the Republican Party. We can't have that. We need to return to normalcy. We need to return to warmonger rhetoric. And then you've got DeSantis and Nikki Haley definitely on the war tour, Nikki Haley more so. One of them, maybe because they would be runner-up, they would end up being the GOP nominee in the end. I'm not sure. Or Trump is the candidate, but he doesn't have his name on all the ballots and people have to write him in. In this case, I think RFK Jr., this would actually benefit him quite a bit. A lot of people looking to vote for somebody who are on the Republican side would maybe then turn to his candidacy as an independent. That's possible. Wow, this is going to be a wild election season. That is all I know. And that is it for tonight's show, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Please email me your thoughts, your suggestions, your comments. Kim@KimIverson.com is how you can reach me at any time. We will be back again tomorrow night with another great show, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, here on Rumble, guys. Have a good night. Bye-bye.